Comme événement. Les enfants du rock, le retour avec RTL2.
Avec Oui FM, la radio rock.
Ce troisième volet des Tribus du rock retrace l'histoire de quelques-uns des groupes les plus excitants et les plus originaux de ces 20 dernières années. Siouxsie and the Banshees, Public Image Limited, Adam and the Ants et les Slits ont tous marqué la pop musique de leur empreinte. Le son, l'image et la carrière de chacun de ces groupes ont tous une racine commune, la scène punk londonienne de la fin des années 70. Pour nombre d'entre eux, leur amitié remonte à l'époque de leur jeunesse punk et leurs chemins n'ont cessé de se croiser au cours des années 80 et 90 à mesure que chaque groupe avançait dans sa propre carrière. Au milieu des années 70, une bande d'adolescents qui s'ennuient à mourir dans la banlieue londonienne a les yeux braqués sur la capitale. Ils montent à Londres, se retrouvent dans les clubs et aux concerts, unis par une passion commune pour la musique et un immense désir de faire scandale.
I sort of got introduced into the nightlife in London, you know, my escape out of the suburbs. My sister used to be a dancer around the sort of pub circuit. A go-go dancer, and I was completely besotted by the lifestyle.
I just decided to quit work forever. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, and I had some tickets to go and see Roxy Music play at Wembley. I went up with my friend Simon, who basically knew Siouxsie sort of second-hand and introduced me there at that concert. And not that I wouldn't have spotted her in the first place. I mean, she was quite extraordinary looking even in those days.
L'attention de ces jeunes se concentre bientôt sur la scène punk naissante, emmenée par les Sex Pistols, la création de Malcolm McLaren.
It was Simon and Seven that told me about, oh, you know, you must come and see this band. You know, they scare the shit out of the audience. They're great, you know.
And they were so loud that you couldn't really make anything out. I just thought that, I mean, the whole feeling of it, I mean, it was just I just thought it was incredible. I just thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. I mean, despite not being able to hear the music.
It was just very exciting, and it was more to do with meeting the people that went to see the Pistols. I mean, it was to see the band as well, but it was a lot more as well.
Suivant l'exemple des Pistols, d'innombrables groupes punk surgissent de tous les coins de la capitale. L'un d'eux se compose d'un futur membre des Sex Pistols, Sid Vicious, et 2-3 filles.
We were a group of people just hung out together, and I went to a pub in Westbourne Grove one night and was introduced to Sid Vicious. And I said I had a guitar, which I probably had had about 3 weeks, and he said, oh, why don't we form a band? And I was quite taken aback, but I was up for it, of course. It's great, can't play a thing, but never mind, nor could he. It just didn't matter.
John Lydon, le Johnny Rotten des Sex Pistols, partage alors un appartement avec Sid. C'est lui qui baptise le groupe.
This was Sid's first time at musicianship, and he fancied himself as a drummer because he was just listening to a Cante Go Mago and he thought he could master that in an evening. They formed this fake band and they didn't have a name, so I came up with Flowers of Romance because I thought it was the most absurd title in the world.
We used to hang out in bars around Notting Hill and be bombarded by journalists saying, "Are you in a band?" Because actually no one looked like us around. There were only 100 or so people who kind of looked like that, and you'd be stopped everywhere you went. You'd be looked at and asked questions as if you were a celebrity just because you looked so strange.
Malcolm McLaren organise un festival punk pour servir de tremplin au groupe londonien. Siouxsie et Séverine acceptent d'y participer, bien qu'aucun d'eux ne possède d'instrument ou ne sache jouer de quoi que ce soit.
Severin was in, and I think Billy said he would play, and Sid said, "Yeah, I'll play."
Yeah, I was just introduced to Susie and Steve. We went to a party that evening, and I think Billy Idol was they had Billy lined up to play guitar, and he didn't want to do it because he basically thought Susie and Steve and Sid were a bunch of idiots. So I thought, well, these are the people for me.
The next day, the Sunday, we had a rehearsal down at the Clash's studio where basically we just learned how to turn everything on, and that was it. And Sid bashed around for like 10 minutes and got bored.
I think we were going to do Goldfinger and Captain Scarlet. Before we even started playing, before 1, 2, 3, 4, we realised that there was absolutely no point. We could never learn these songs. You know, it would have taken us 6 months to learn Goldfinger, and you know we were playing the next night. So Sid said, "Well, let's just make a noise." And we all said, "Fine, let's do that then."
We turned up, and me and my naivety kind of said, "Right, I want to be really loud, so I want 3 microphones, okay?" So I really don't know if this sound engineer was as naive as I would. He said, "All right." So that was, you know, kind of a trademark to start off with. I had these 3 microphones gaffered together because I wanted not twice as loud, but 3 times as loud as anyone else. I wanted to, you know, because I'd read about people's bowels dropping out with certain frequencies, and I thought if I can really try and make it painful, we might see some action here.
I don't even know to this day if I was actually turned on. It sounded like there was something humming behind me. Sid was just bashing away, and Marco knew the riffs. Marco could play Smoke on the Water, and I think Marco was quite good even then. And he got some handsome feedback, and that's all we needed.
Something happened. Something happened. Ooh.
It was brilliant. It was, you know, the energy was there, and it was really, it was perfect for that moment in time.
It was me singing or saying the Lord's Prayer, but with like twist and shout, Deutschland über alles, knocking on heaven's door.
Susie was barking out these words and lyrics from songs of the past to rearrange the whole meaning.
And over all of this was the only musician who was like this smoke on the water was wafting in and out of this cacophony. It was so bizarre.
With hindsight, we can say it's an art performance or something, but it was just 4 people got up, couldn't be bothered to write any songs, couldn't really play anything, and we just made a noise.
And then just walked straight back into the crowd, and, you know, I think we immediately did an Evening Standard interview where we said we're splitting up.
But I think we looked good, so I mean, you know, that's the thing we were sort of most interested in.
La première formation de Siouxsie and the Banshees ne dure que le temps d'un concert. De leur côté, les Flowers of Romance ont également beaucoup de mal à garder une formation fixe.
Invited to go and play with Sid, Steve and Vivian Albertine, Steve Walsh, at the Clash's rehearsal rooms in Camden Town. It was freezing. They had a little electric fire there, I remember, with 1 bar on it. Sid used to always be spitting on it, and it would and all these kind of things, and played a few songs. Sid had a few songs of his own. Belson Was a Gas was one of them. And then we'd do some Ramones songs, and then it would all fall apart.
Pendant que les Flowers of Romance patauchent péniblement, Siouxsie et Séverine, encouragés par leur première expérience, décident de recruter d'autres musiciens. Ils s'associent avec le protégé de Malcolm McLaren, Neil Stevenson, qui accepte de les manager et demande à Kenny Morris de devenir leur batteur.
And the first thing I remember was that Siouxsie was delivering almost like a staccato, almost like a beat in itself. And I just played right up against that with the rhythm.
Even then, he was quite sort of very earnest and quite, very sort of pretentiously arty, but that was fine in those days. And he had a lot of good ideas and a lot of energy, and he looked the part. And it's basically the three of us just hunting around for a guitarist for a while.
That's one thing I never want to do again, is look for guitarists. I mean, these people just turn up and plug in and go...
They seemed to have trouble finding someone. I thought they'd have someone like that, because there must have been 1,000 musicians in London up for the job.
And then they realise you pulled the plug out and they say, oh, okay, and it's almost like they're just going on to the next audition, and it was so demoralising, and it's like, oh, we're never going to find somebody we can fit into what we want to do.
They were kind of the people I've been looking for since I was a teenager and into David Bowie and Roxy Music, Lou Reed. They had the right sort of attitude.
I remember he had those, and I hated them, had those horrible plastic sandals, that looked like sort of skeleton feet. But I thought from the shoulders upwards he looked really good.
Once that was the four-piece, everything escalated really fast.
Après avoir joué dans la première formation de Siouxsie and the Banshees, Marco Pironi a formé The Models, un des nombreux groupes punk signés par de grandes maisons de disques à l'affût de la dernière tendance à la mode.
After our second gig, we recorded a single, and we had no idea. We couldn't even, we couldn't even play our own songs. Never mind about record a single. Everybody wanted their own little punk band. Anyone who had short hair and drape up trousers, they were signed. I don't think anyone really, certainly the majors didn't know what they were signing. They probably had a few kind of 20-year-old A&R men and said, look, go and find a punk band, anything will do, it all sounds disgusting, so it doesn't really matter.
Un autre combo punk, Adam and the Ants, décide d'adopter un look extrême pour tenter de surnager au-dessus du lot.
I started off scaring the crap out of the audience by wearing adopting rapist hoods and leather and looking like a sort of gimp, really. And attacking the audience was my first ploy. We did our debut at the ICA. I phoned up and said we were a country and western band, and we went there one lunchtime and turned up, and I was all strapped up and everything, had this hood on, and they watched all this equipment coming in, and they think this is a bit strange, and I did two verses of Beat My Guest, and that was it. They slung me out.
Désormais, les Banshees connaissent un succès monstre en concert. Pourtant, contrairement à leurs concurrents, ils n'ont toujours pas été signés sur un label.
We were headlining, we were playing to 1,000 people, and there were bands who were being signed for 12 albums deals and stuff, and they were playing to 100 people if they could.
Quelqu'un, peut-être leur manager, tente de faire bouger les choses en faisant subir une pression peu orthodoxe sur les grandes maisons de disques.
One morning, every record company was either spray painted or had, or chiseled with the slogan "Sign the Banshees, do it now." I don't know if Neil's had anything to do with it. He swore he didn't, but it was a fantastic idea, and it certainly kept the temperature up.
Les Banshees signent enfin leur premier contrat et leur premier single, Hong Kong Garden, est un succès immédiat.
We did the first tour in a limo, which got destroyed by the punters in Glasgow. They scratched capital S dogs on it or something, a couple less pigs, which we thought was hilarious. After the show, we thought there might be a bit of an incident outside, so we did the whole sort of leap into the back of a van with blankets over us, kind of. And we thought, oh, we've arrived, you know, it's just like David Cassidy.
En 1978, après la dissolution des Sex Pistols, John Lydon forme Public Image Limited. Pour lui, c'est une tentative délibérée d'échapper à l'héritage punk.
Intense relief, because the Pistols had become, to my mind, very much like the Rolling Stones, and the rest of the band really just wanted to trot out songs in that same format. I'd already started writing material that turned out on the first Public Image album at that point, but I couldn't get any of the Pistols interested in that kind of stuff.
You never listen to a word that I say. You only see me fight across my way. I did the inquest, got so much deeper. They must have been the top of my head. The public enemy.
The whole idea was to just keep it entertaining, firstly for us, and then hopefully that translates to record sales, because let's face it, we do need the money.
Avec Keith Levin à la guitare et Jah Wobble à la basse, Public Image Limited donne un de ses premiers concerts au Rainbow le jour de Noël.
The Rainbow live on Christmas Day I thought was a stunner. Nobody did anything on Christmas Day in England. That was groundbreaking. It was a bit of a shame that a huge fight broke out, but nobody really got hurt. It wasn't like Razors, it was all fisticuffs. Of course, there were all the cliches of, like, you know, play Never Mind the Bollocks, but bollocks was my answer.
De son côté, Viv Albertine, ex-Flowers of Romance, a rejoint un groupe punk exclusivement féminin, les Slits.
We were very consciously not trying to make rhythms that we thought were male rhythms, and it sounds really odd, but we'd think, hang on a minute, I don't want to bash this out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we tried to listen sort of inside to what our rhythms were like, and they were all over the place, and that's why the music was all over the place. But you know, it wasn't about making rock and roll, male rock and roll.
The Slits were a highly original outfit, completely stunning, I thought, in every way. Completely purposeful and full of guts, and quite insane. And definitely brought women to the forefront, and punk did that. It brought women out of that awful Ronettes, tra-la-la thing that women were always seen as like background vocalists or fake hairdos. All that changed, but they didn't really realise what they had.
People say now the Slits were great because you know, they're so wild, you never know what was going to happen in their gigs. Well, that used to give me diarrhea every time I went out onto stage. I was so nervous. We all were. We didn't know how the gig was going to go. We could hardly play. We didn't know if we'd start or finish each song at the same time. Someone would forget, you know, Tessa might forget the bass line. I'd suddenly forget the chorus of a song. It was absolutely nerve-wracking.
Fucking shit, sort of tune.
Palmolive partie, il faut la remplacer. Contre toute attente, elles choisissent un batteur.
It was a girl. It's a girl's unit, you know. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe I was the token girl.
Budgie was a fantastic drummer and actually brought the whole thing together. He was so solid, whereas before, you know, we'd all been a bit more improvisational, but he was absolutely rock solid, and all the songs suddenly gelled, and that's when we felt we wanted to record.
They were totally untutored in a sense, and didn't give a toss about what anybody, especially the kind of very male-dominated music industry at the time, and it really meant you could play what you wanted as long as you kind of like felt it, you know, as it came from here somewhere.
Au sein des Banshees, les premiers signes de mésentente apparaissent au moment de choisir un producteur pour leur prochain single, Playground Twist. Leur manager, Neil Stevenson, opte pour un Américain, Mike Stavrou, un choix qui ne fait pas l'unanimité.
That was the beginning of the rift between me and Siouxsie and John and Kenny, because John and Kenny just couldn't bear him.
And he didn't like our music for a start. He was so laid back, everything took for ages to get done. And He just didn't give a shit.
Stavro was not a joy to work with, and Niels interfered in the production and started to try and get me to do things that I did not do naturally because he liked other guitarists doing them.
He knew who buttered his bread, so he was listening to me and Siouxsie and Niels and not really paying too much attention to John and Kenny.
We couldn't write new songs fast enough because we weren't getting on well enough. And it wasn't out and out fighting, but it wasn't a very creative atmosphere either. And I had 3 or 4 songs that could have gone on Join Hands, but we just couldn't get them together. It just wasn't the same sort of core feeling that we'd had. It had been split by Niels completely down the middle.
And I think that vibe just got in the way.
La tournée qui suit est émaillée de difficultés. La situation devient vraiment critique lors d'une séance de dédicace dans un magasin de disques à Aberdeen.
We walked into the record shop and they were playing Join Hands. John immediately took it off and put the Slits album on, which had come out the same week, because he couldn't bear to hear it again. So Siouxsie got, her hackles were rising already. And we started signing a few things. And then Polydor had basically made the mistake of not actually supplying the shop with enough records. So Niels had a box of promo albums in the back of the van.
And they were stamped with gold, not for resale. So I presumed that we were just going to hand a few out on the way around the tour, not all in the record shop, but just on the way around the tour, hand a couple of hours promotional copies, which may have been naive, but that's what I thought.
And as soon as John Mackay saw that it was being sold, he went ballistic without finding out, and he started giving them away. And I think that's when Siouxsie clocked him.
I stood there for a second and then looked at Kenny. Kenny looked at me and we just walked straight out. We actually walked down the road to a coffee shop and sat down there and tried to calm down. But it was just the last insult, really. It was a misunderstanding, as it turns out, but it was just the last straw.
We went straight to soundcheck, fully expecting to see them there. And, they didn't show, and they didn't show again.
I packed, Kenny packed, we ordered a cab, we got in the cab, and it wasn't until we were sitting in the cab that Niels turned up.
Saying, I've invested £45,000 in this tour.
It could have been pointed out, even then it was a crazy thing to do.
Anyway, he had his hand on my neck.
But by the time Niels was hanging through the taxi window saying, "You'll never work again," that was the last of our worries, really.
There was nothing more to do but wind up the window on his arm.
I was only too pleased to see him in some agony.
It fucking flushed everything down the toilet, basically. And I just thought it's such a shitty thing to do to anyone, let alone somebody you'd practically live with for 2 years.
And I remember, I don't mind admitting, turning to John Mackay and saying, but we're not going to the station. Why? Because that's the first place Siouxsie's going to look. And I know Siouxsie, she'll go through every carriage on the Rampage and she'll search under every seat. Of course she did.
If I'd have been able to get my hands on either of them, I feel sure I would have become close to throttling the life out of them.
And we went to Glasgow airport and paid the taxi. They actually let the steps down of the little plane because it was going, and let us get over the thing and everything, jump on this little plane. And it wasn't going as far as London, so got a lift on a coach. We were the only 2 people on the coach, and the driver was crazy. He drove, it must have been 120 miles an hour in the night, in the rain, and it was just like something in a dream. Went and stayed at John's uncle's house for one night, and then we went off to a friend's cottage in Somerset, in the middle of nowhere. And lucky we did, because we opened the papers the following day, and Banshee split, and Siouxsie quoted as sort of saying, if you have 1 ounce of the hatred or something that we have for those arty ones, you can kill them in my name.
De retour à Aberdeen, Siouxsie et Séverine doivent très vite recruter un nouveau batteur et un guitariste sous peine de devoir abandonner la tournée. Ils se tournent alors vers Budgie qui vient de quitter les Slits.
So I was there with my like roll-ups and pint of bitter, and they had like vodka and tonic and Rothmans, and I thought, this is the cultural difference. This is the divide between the band on tour and the drummer out of a job, you know. And the next thing we were in rehearsals, auditioning guitarists, like what seemed like an age.
But at the end of the rehearsal, I kind of think, well, Budgie was really good. It kind of didn't really piss me off at all. You know, I noticed him in that he didn't do anything that that was like sort of busy, because I hate busy drummers.
And they had Marco Peronian on guitar to help us get through the rehearsals, which was bizarre.
Then they asked Marco to join. He said by lunchtime he wanted to kill himself. He said he would rather slit his throat.
Quant aux guitaristes, ils empruntent Robert Smith de Cure qui assure leur première partie.
And I think it was within about 2 weeks of rehearsals we went back on the road and picked up the Join Hands tour.
The audience actually knew the songs better than I did. I remember in the first gig at Leicester, de Montfort Hall, where there was supposed to be a stop in the song. I think it was Switch being the classic one. And every time Siouxsie stopped singing, I remember I would think, oh, shit, stop. And the audience were kind of like miming the drums for me, you know, and as they sang all the lyrics as well. So I had to quickly make sure I got it right.
Immediately there was a kind of, a lighter atmosphere in the whole proceedings, because they were just different characters, and we knew this wasn't going to last. We thought, we're just going to do this tour and then we'll sit down and recamp and have a think about what to do next.
Alors que les Banshees se reforment, Marco Pironi commence à se lasser de jouer au sein des Models.
I got rapidly disillusioned with punk. I think we did a tour of the Heartbreakers, and I just thought, well, we're going nowhere. This is like dead boring. I was sick of playing to kind of northern punk rockers, really. And I really wanted to be in a band that made singles and sold records, and because that's the music I like. I like pop music. I like Slade. I like Gary Glitter.
Adam Ant, lui aussi déçu par le punk, cherche à développer un son plus pop.
I've seen bands like the Police on television, and the very few punk bands that made singles, and got through, like the Jam and people like that. There was nothing there that intimidated me at all, and I didn't think I could do as well, if not better. And I think that drive took me to desperate measures.
Adam va voir l'ex-manager des Pistols, Malcolm McLaren, et lui demande de l'aider à trouver une nouvelle voie vers le succès.
He started getting into this idea of the Burundi thing and the tribal thing. It was really more of a tribal thing. And he got Burundi Black and speeded it up to 78. So that was it. And I remember we'd have to go to Dave Barb's house, and sit in a circle and, you should hit sticks, boy. We don't want guitars, we want sticks. Because at the start he just wanted sticks, and I think he wanted a prehistoric sort of band.
Ces musiciens deviennent le noyau du nouveau projet de McLaren baptisé Bo Wo Wo. Persuadé qu'on lui a volé son groupe, Adam décide de contre-attaquer et commence à recruter une nouvelle formation.
First thing I did, I just went up to Harrow and saw Marco the same day. Because I'd seen him in the Models, and I thought he was the only guitarist that could play.
He pushed a note through my letterbox because he didn't have my phone number. And I got home, and my mum said, this guy called Adam came round. I was thinking, well, I only know one Adam. He surely he wouldn't come all the way up here. I don't hardly know him, but it was him.
McLaren lance Bo Wo Wo, avec lequel Adam and the Ants entre en compétition directe.
They were the enemy, Bow Wow Wow. Oh, yeah.
It was a race. It was a downright out-and-out race. They already had C30 coming out.
They were signed to the same publishing company, and we stole a cassette because we desperately wanted to hear it.
C30C, 1690, go! C30C, 1690, go! C30, C60, C30C, 1690, go!
And we heard it, and we thought, this is great. This is really good. We're going to have to work. I mean, thank God that it was, because it really made us work harder.
A new rock family, a world nobility. We are the family.
I didn't think a pop-up cassette pack meant anything, but I do know about the way I looked, and I knew about the way we sounded, and I knew about Hollywood and the impact it has on people. And I was a big fan of history. It had evolved over the years wearing makeup, and by the time I put that together, the Apache line was a declaration of war. So really I was able to put the tribal thing together with something that was quite heroic.
Si certains groupes comme les Hands renouent avec le succès en changeant de formule et de look, les Slits refusent de compromettre leurs racines punk.
We wanted to just be commercial but be ourselves, and then somehow the two things didn't go together. I don't know if you have to compromise too much to be commercial, maybe. You just have to rub too many edges off. We wanted to keep our edges. They wouldn't play you if you had a name like that. And in fact, we were beginning to think we might change the name 5 or 6 years into the band, but actually we split up instead, so...
Premier changement au sein de Public Image Limited, Jeyem est remercié.
He used a tape outside of the studio to make one of his own solo projects, and I suppose you could say he invented sampling.
En 1984, Public Image Limited se réduit au seul John Lydon. Il décide alors d'engager un groupe déjà formé pour l'accompagner lors d'une tournée de ses plus grands succès.
There was no real band at the time, and there were some concert dates arranged, and I thought it would be whoopee good fun to tour Japan with a Holiday Inn, you know, greatest hits outfit. And it was brilliant. I have every right to perform it anytime I so wish, because I wrote the damn thing. It's my song. And when I feel it's necessary to do it, then we do it. But there's no rules about it.
Les Banshees continuent désormais avec Budgie comme membre permanent. Mais le départ abrupt de John McKay et de Kenny Morris a marqué tous les protagonistes.
It left us completely bereft of record company, group, management, everything. They kind of convinced themselves for a little while that we'd planned it, but it just doesn't make sense.
As soon as we got off the road, I was just in bed for about a month. Anyway, I did a lot of writing, and one of the songs was called Drop Dead, which was to a certain duo. I thought it'd be great if there was a singing telegram with, you know, some dead roses that turned up at somebody's doorstep, completely loathed, so I invented a kind of a singing telegram to wish somebody ill.
Drop dead, you stinking little creep, drop dead.
I kind of enjoyed doing that.
En quête d'un nouveau guitariste, Séverine repère un Banshee potentiel en la personne de John McGeoch.
I saw McGeoch play with Magazine on TV, and I thought that was it. We had to steal him, and it was the first of many thefts.
Niels Stevenson, who was the manager at the time, reckoned he courted me with limousines and champagne and stuff like that. Well, he did, but that wasn't why I joined the Banshees. I wanted to be a Banshee. I couldn't resist.
And it was like a new lease of life. What was so great was it wasn't continuing where we left off, it was just starting again.
We had that fantastic run of singles, and that's testament to his influence on us and us bringing the best out in him. And you know, that's one of my favourite times.
Les Banshees alignent alors les singles, acclamés aussi bien par le public que la critique. Adam and the Ants vont eux aussi entrer dans une ère de domination des charts, sans pourtant recueillir les faveurs de la presse musicale.
I think about a week before we went on top of the pops, Nick Kent had written that I'd gripped defeat from the mouth of victory and business like that. We were the fag end of punk rock. When we finally got on the TV and we finally had the opportunity to not have to answer to anybody but the public embraced kind of all the elements like they do with any pop band. That's the beauty of pop, is that, you know, everything you do gets embraced. Everything you say means something. Even though it may be meaningless, it means something to a generation of kids who don't want to listen to anybody else. They want to listen to you because they like the way you look and they like the way you sound. And you give them something for a couple of years.
I'm a Danny Highwayman who you're too scared to mention. I spend my cash on looking flash and grabbing your attention.
It's a pirate on land. And he wears a mask and a good hat. I mean, I suppose that was the sort of... It's dead obvious, you know, once you've got a song about a highwayman, has to be called Stand and Deliver, and it has to go dum-da-dum, da-dum, da-dum, you know, it's, you know. I mean, I like, when we brought out Stand and Deliver, the enemy accused us of putting, oh, this sounds like it should have coconuts on it, you know, and what they didn't know is it does have coconuts on it, but they're mixed quite low.
Avec une formation enfin fixe, les Banshees tournent dans le monde entier. Mais John McGeoch a de plus en plus de mal à supporter ce rythme infernal.
The pressures were about putting up an outstanding performance every night. And, you know, Siouxsie used to kind of G us up before we went on stage because, you know, we tried to make each gig special. We'd make up the set list in the dressing room, you know, after the sound check and before the concert. It was... In a sense, it was the pursuit of excellence, really, you know, which we pretty much kept up for a long time.
We spent the whole year touring, and particularly in Europe and America, the touring was the circumstances were really tough. And I think it just took its toll on him more than anybody else, really. So he kind of had to be rested. For medical reasons, really. I don't really want to go into much more of it than that.
A few shows had started to fuck up, and finally, the show we were doing, he was playing another song, you know, Melt during Happy House, and I mean, literally didn't know. I mean, he was just gone, completely gone.
And I just played a terrible gig. And, you know, we flew home and that was it. It was beyond knuckle rapping, you know, it was unpardonable. Speaking to Siouxsie later, she said that she thought I had ceased to want to be a banshee.
Une nouvelle fois, les Banshees doivent se remettre en quête d'un guitariste, une tâche que Siouxsie n'apprécie guère.
It was so daunting thinking of doing that again. And then in steps Robert Smith.
He knew all the songs. You know, there was only one person who knew them better was McGeoch. And it was just obvious. And he basically put The Cure on hold. So it suited him to come on board the Banshees again and ride the gravy train to weirdness.
Robert Smith devient un membre semi-permanent du groupe.
He said, well, I played with you last time, but we didn't record, so this time we've got to make a record together before this all, you know, disintegrates. There was always the notion that he would have to get back to work, you know, to his real life.
Robert was sort of like a little brother to Severin. You know, Severin was kind of dressing him up and showing how to wear shades and letting him borrow his, you know, white jacket and jewellery, you know, his crucifixes and that. There was also a time when he started experimenting my lipstick and...
He got his trademark lipstick from Siouxsie's lipstick. He asked her for it one day when we were out at a club and came back from the gents wearing it, and that was it. It began.
Not very good. I wish he'd use a mirror to put that lipstick on.
And Siouxsie still wants the wig back, but, you know, it's probably a bit ratty by now.
Éprouvant le besoin de s'éloigner momentanément des Banshees, Séverine enregistre un album avec Robert Smith pendant que Siouxsie et Budgie sortent un single sous le nom des Creatures. Une collaboration qui dépasse bientôt le cadre professionnel.
Me and Budgie, you know, we kind of, we'd had a relationship for probably since the EP, kind of clandestine relationship. And we kind, you know, I was very aware of, like, that side of things, not making things any worse within the band. So anything personal, that couldn't come within any striking distance of the band. It didn't exist.
You know, it's not the easiest when your other two partners are a couple. It makes it a bit difficult because they kind of tend to think in tandem and talk about things when they're, you know, the normal things. But Siouxsie always put the band first anyway.
Au même moment, Adam sent que son groupe arrive en bout de course.
The band just wasn't functioning. We were just exhausted, didn't like each other. We had 3 managers in the band, you know, and I had to make appointments to get a sound check.
It got very rock business. Everyone seemed to have their own manager, and it was just, I didn't, you know, it was too much to lug around.
There was one sound check we were doing, and I don't know, it's always places like Scandinavia, you know, there's a hello, and you're in the middle of this big place, and Chris Hughes was playing Frank Zappa, Marco was playing Blockbuster by the Sweet, Gary Tibbs was playing Slap Funk, which Marco hates, and Terry was having a cup of coffee, and I thought, I'm sitting up there listening to it, and I just thought, this is a nightmare.
Hey, Marco, what's all of the noise, huh?
Adam part aux États-Unis où il poursuit une carrière de chanteur et d'acteur. Marco continue d'écrire pour lui, mais reste en Angleterre.
We thought, well, let's take a break. We've been working for like, 6-7 years, non-stop. And Adam went off to America to pursue his whatever he wanted to pursue. And I stayed here and pursued, well, I just felt like doing nothing for a while, really.
Au milieu des années 80, John Lydon recrute une nouvelle formation de Public Image Limited.
There's no adverts in newspapers or anything like that with me. It's just people I run into. Worked with very many, like, incredible good musicians too. Like John McGeoch, for instance.
I was a fan, you know. I nearly asked for his autograph. No. I met him in New York. I met John in New York in about 1982 when I was over there with the Banshees. And we hit it off. We went out and got drunk, and he cooked a turkey. Can you believe it? He really did cook a turkey. His apartment.
The fun with him would be, he is such an incredibly good guitarist. I really liked working almost against that. So he'd be deliberately structured tune-wise, and I would deliberately play opposite that. I thought that made for some damn exciting sound moments.
We were very big in America. Couldn't get arrested in the UK. We did 140 gigs one year in North America and Japan and places like that, and 2 in England.
Au sein des Banshees, le noyau dur formé de Siouxsie, Budgie et Séverine s'adjoint les services de John Carothers et plus tard de Martin McCarrick et John Klein. Parmi les albums enregistrés par le groupe pendant la seconde moitié des années 80, certains vont connaître un immense succès. Aucun d'eux n'avait revu ni parlé à leur ex-guitariste John McKay depuis 1979 lorsque celui-ci les avait quittés en pleine tournée. Puis, 10 ans plus tard, pendant sa lune de miel dans un petit hôtel dans la région des Lacs, le passé de McKay ressurgit.
We went down to dinner that night and went to sit down, and our hosts came over and said, "No, we've got a table for you, it's just over here." And we looked down to the other end of the room, and there, sitting in the bay window, was Siouxsie and Budgie.
Oh, so we end up being like 4 of maybe 8 residents in this hotel isolated in the middle of the Lake District, and we were sitting there, what are we going to talk about?
You know, Sue and I hadn't spoken since '79, basically. And we sat down and had the meal. All had indigestion, I think. Linda got a bottle of vodka from the room and got us talking. And by the end of the evening, we kind of patched things up. I don't know if we'd actually covered everything, but we understood one another a bit more. And it wasn't daggers drawn anymore. And it was just such an incredible coincidence anyway that, you know, it's the sort of thing you can't fight.
Au début des années 90, Siouxsie et Budgie s'installent dans le sud de la France, une décision qui ne fait pas l'unanimité au sein du groupe, obligé d'aller enregistrer sur place.
Me and Budgie would be going through things with Martin and John, working things out. You know, Severin would be sulking in his room.
You know, for God's sake, are we bloody Pink Floyd or all of a sudden, you know, shall we reconvene in 1995 or whatever? You know,
There were no distractions. And I think, again, that was another kind of conflict. I think he quite welcomed distractions.
If you know, things haven't gone well in the studio, you just pop into Soho and have a few drinks, get your mind off it, meet different people and whatever. And that's always the way I've kind of coped with it, you know, distractions in a social sense, as opposed to, you know, let's go into the garden and see how the rhododendrons are doing.
I'd rather sit and have a fag and think about it rather than like breathe in the air and feel rejuvenated.
It's not really my cup of cha.
So I think he had quite a miserable time.
I know that I'm to blame. Tearing apart.
Au milieu des années 90, tous les membres des Banshees se demandent s'il ne vaut pas mieux en rester là.
The last album was The Rapture, and there was a lot of, it was like, that was hard work, getting the thing organised. And I think that's kind of, to me, was that it was, I suppose, certainly the first warning sign, if you like, you know, that this is not working the way it used to be.
We were always going to be either, you know, one of the punk survivors, which is a, you know, horrible term, goth veterans, you know. They're all really derogatory terms.
I just felt everybody was wearing blinkers and I was sick of it, and I just said, right, well, that's it.
Après 20 ans de carrière, ils annoncent leur séparation. Au même moment, les Sex Pistols se reforment.
It wasn't the great big money earner that the world would like to believe, and it was a bit of fun, and it's something I really wanted to do. I thought it was the right time to do it.
That did cheer me up. I mean, the Pistols asked if we wanted to support them. I said, oh, bugger off, we just split up.
Mentally, you do go through that process where you feel like you just want to escape from your past, and then you come around to realise, well, your past is as important as your future, and both take place in the present, whether you like it or not. No shame.
No, I'm not interested in those kind of... I'm not more into sequins and sequels myself.
This
stand perfectly still.
Punk rock et new wave, Cure, Siouxsie et bien d'autres, les tribus du rock, Banshees and Other Creatures à suivre sur Jimmy.